IVM. Welcome to the show. This round is on me. We've all heard about how the pandemic has changed a lot of things across the world. However, the one thing that the pandemic didn't change was the retail consumption of wine. In fact, even with restaurants like ours being closed, the drinking simply moved location to home instead. Today, my guest is someone who is a pioneer in the Indian wine segment. Rajeev Samant, founder and CEO of Sula Vineyards. Rajeev has had innumerable firsts in India, planting the first Sauvignon blanc, Riesling and Zinfandel, revolutionizing wine tourism with the first winery tasting room in 2005, first vineyard resort, Beyond By Sula in 2007, and the country's first vineyard music festival, Sula Fest, well known to music lovers across the country. His entrepreneurial spirit has been instrumental in creating a thriving local wine industry in India and has brought global recognition and a fan following for Indian wine and the Sula brand. Today, Sula Vineyards is India's largest wine producer and holds a market share of 65%. Welcome to the show, Rajeev. It's great to have you here.
So nice to be on the show, Gauri. Thanks for your kind words.
So, Rajeev, first and foremost, how has COVID-19 impacted wine producers and vineyards in India?
So I would put it a bit like Dante's allegory, the Inferno, where you have three parts to it. Basically, you start off in hell, in the Inferno, which I would say would be the first 3 months for us. March, April, and May were absolute hell because the Indian government, in all their wisdom, decided to put an end to all alcohol sales across the country. So we collapsed from a pretty healthy market to zero sales overnight, as you very well know what that feels like. Then we went into a bit of a purgatory stage for a couple of months when we started emerging from lockdown, but there was schizophrenia across the country where they opened some shops. And then, of course, there was a big crowd. I mean, what do you expect? And then they had to shut the shops again. And so we just didn't know if we were coming or going. And now I'm really happy to say that we've sort of come to the Paradiso stage where sales have bounced back really strongly. And one of the main reasons for that, as you said, was that retail sales have been really strong, and those have taken back a lot of the share that we've lost. I mean, the sales that we've lost in institutions, hotels, restaurants. And things are looking really bright. So just to put it in perspective, October, November, we're maybe single digits below last year, October, November. So that's a really good result. Yeah, and last year was a good year. So we're back to, we've had a V-shaped recovery, cross fingers and touch wood that we don't have more lockdowns and more infections ahead of us. Everything is possible, but right now we're pretty much in the clear.
Okay. And what was it like for the wine growers and the farmers and things? Because that you can't put a stop on that. Obviously, that would have been the growing season continues as.
So actually, it was totally fine in terms of the farmers. They didn't have to stop farming or anything. We were allowed to complete our harvest by the local authorities. So we, at that point, in fact, all manufacturing facilities also were asked to shut, but anyone processing fruits and veggies was allowed to stay open because those are perishable. So we were able to complete harvest 2020 without a problem. All the farmers have, mostly been paid for that by now or are getting paid. And 2021, when that comes, will be Jan, Feb, March. Again, not a problem. So the growers, in fact, have not been impacted at all. The only thing is that last year was a very low harvest because of the very heavy monsoon and the long tail of the monsoon the year before. But this year has been a perfect monsoon so far. It's a perfect growing season. It looks like we have many, many grapes coming in.
Wow. But, coming back to the restaurants and hotels, which of course consume a large chunk of what's distributed from your winery, it's still a very, it's still expected to take time to normalize. It's a very uncertain period for establishments like ours. So what kind of crisis, if any, is the industry staring at in the long term?
So that's a pretty dire situation on that side. So if you think about your own situation, you've probably just been able to reopen in the last couple of weeks, maybe and that too with spacing, and that too with people reluctant to come in and all of that kind of stuff. And then you're also sitting on a whole buttload of stocks of booze from before the shutdown. So you might have started your operations, but it's going to be some time before you start picking up booze. You're probably cash flow constrained. So, you're probably thinking that, for the time being, whatever we've got, whatever stocks we've got, let's sell that. There's no point in ordering more stocks of, of the stuff that's missing from the list. Plus, there's the whole embargo situation, with the distributors refusing to supply. So for various reasons, we are going to be at least a couple months behind in terms of selling to restaurants than you all are with opening. So we've seen barely any sale to any hotel or restaurant across the country, with maybe the exception of Goa, where, the beach shacks, etc., tend to keep much lower stock levels. But anyone who has a semi-decent or a decent place with decent stocks, they're still working down those stocks. So just to give you some data, institution sales were probably 30% of our sales. 70% of our sales has been retail in this last year or two, just before COVID. When we started, 70% of our sales were to restaurants and hotels, and only 30% was retail for the first couple of years. But then that just shows how the wine business changed so much in India that, consumers are today drinking wine at home, very comfortable about buying it from a shop, where it used to be that there were certain iconic places like Indigo, etc., where you'd go and drink wine. Nobody had wine at home. So that's all changed. So 30% of our sale has gone down almost to zero, but the 70% has bounced back almost 20% above, at least in Sula's case.
Right.
So, you're down, you end up being down about 10-15%.
Right. And what about, I know that you also have a presence in the international market and you did export a lot of your wine. So what's the situation with that right now?
So that has been tough. A lot of markets just shut down, and then there's been a collapse in sale in a lot of places. I know you'll read that a lot of people drinking a lot at home, but it doesn't make up for all the loss in the institutional business. So if you take, for instance, London is one of our big markets. Mostly our wines are sold in restaurants. Right. So that business collapsed. So, but for Sula, our international sales are less than 5% of our overall sales. 95% we sell in India. India is, after all, one of the last, growing markets, still with a lot of growth ahead. We have a dominant position. So we very much focus on India. So from that point of view, it wasn't, plus international sales are less profitable. So it's highly competitive. So we haven't lost that much by not being able to supply. But yes, international sales almost collapsed.
Sure. So, looking at the other way, Sula also has an international portfolio of wines, which you import from various countries. So before we talk about, the impact on the sale of that wine, take me back a few years and explain the thought process behind that diversification, considering you're a domestic brand and a homegrown brand. What was the thought process behind also expanding into importing wines? Right.
So that's a good question. When we started out, there was nobody who could sell wine across the country. Nobody knew anything about wine. You had the traditional distributors who, if you told, they know the difference between red label and black label, but they don't know the difference between Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay, leave alone Cabernet and Shiraz. So we had to put together our own sales force from scratch. Now, once we'd done that, and this sales force is going into accounts like yours, going into the table, offering you our wine, it absolutely makes sense that sales force should also, that marketing head or whoever should also offer you a nice portfolio of some imported wines. We look at your own example, Gauri, and at the table, you have probably 80% imports on your list and 20% domestics. So, we are by far and away the leader in the domestic segment. It didn't make sense for us that we just leave the imported segment to so-called importers. What is an importer? An importer is just somebody who decides to import wine. So we have the big advantage there. We've got the entire infrastructure set up. We've got a cold chain set up. We import into an air-conditioned warehouse. Then we insist that all our distributors air-condition their premises for our own wine. So, you've got the benefit for your imported wine. And then when our person goes in, you've got a portfolio book, which has, hey, here's our Sula, and then here's our Argentinian and our Australian and our Chilean. And so that just made total sense because our cost structure ends up being much lower. Right. Rather than, if you look at the overall import business in India, it's less than 20% of the Indian wine business.
Right.
That's actually the way it is. 80%, more than 80% is Indian wine, 20% or less is imported wine. So, your cost structure can be pretty hefty if you're a pure imports player.
So it's basically efficiency. I mean, that's
absolutely. In fact, let me say it's very difficult to survive. You would find importers coming and going because the costs are hefty, and customs and bureaucrats don't make it any easier.
Right. So, talking a little bit about that, I've definitely seen, the table's been around 10 years, and I've seen an incredible evolution in the quality of, our homegrown wines. And, but like you mentioned earlier, a large, sorry?
Great to hear that. Good to hear that.
Yeah, no, I'm not just saying that. I genuinely, I genuinely have sort of, I'm really proud to have the number of Indian wines we have. And we've seen the domestic sort of chunk of our wine list, the percentage increasing over the years. And I'm really proud of that. But like you mentioned, there's still a large chunk of, share that's taken up by the imported wines. And considering that, India is still a nascent wine consumer, if we want to make wine more accessible and consumed more, the imported wines do need to be able to sort of compete with the domestic counterpart. But, as you know, import duties have made it quite prohibitive for imported wines to make that kind of entry. And therefore, it's possibly still seen as a slightly elitist drink because of the price point. What are your thoughts on this? This is something that we as an industry constantly sort of, feel like it's not a level playing field. What are your thoughts on this?
Look, it's a complicated situation because don't forget that, wine is one of the few success stories of Indian agriculture over the last couple of decades. So if you look at wine, there's been constant growth. All our wines, all the wines that Sula produces and sells under the Sula brand are all from grapes grown mostly in Maharashtra and also in Karnataka, with clear benefits, handsome benefits to grape growers. So at a time when the government really wants to support rural incomes, farmer incomes, plus wine is a rural industry. It's one of those few industries that can actually thrive in the countryside. So it generates rural employment. So it supports farmers and it generates rural and village level employment. There are very few other industries that can claim that. So when you have that, obviously the government is very reluctant to open up things easily for imported wines. However, having said that, we are a little bit more nuanced with it. What we believe is that there is scope for reduction of duties on more expensive wines. Right now, it's a straight 150% central customs duty, and then you have the state duties. And our position on that has always been that look, we don't support 150% across the board. What we need really is protection from really low-end wines that are subsidized by their countries. And there's a lot of examples of that. I'll tell you about that. We don't need protection from first or second growth Bordeaux and from Champagne and from wines that, wines that are landing in India at over 5-6 euros a bottle. We don't need as much protection from that. Let that be a separate segment. So that's something that, we are always actively talking to the government, and the government also understands very nuanced. But we have something in Europe, especially called the Common Agriculture Program. It's billions of euros that supports European agriculture. 1 billion euros a year goes to European wine and grapes. 1 billion euros a year. Just to put things in perspective, we get zero, a big, beautiful anda from our center. We don't ask for it. So the way that the center here gives some boost or protection or whatever you can call it is by having high tariffs. In Europe, it's the other way around. They give money directly to growers and to wine producers. So for instance, when that wine person comes in, does a market wine dinner here, flies in from France, half the cost often is borne by the European Union. You might not know it. So, it becomes so much more difficult to compete. So we always say that, look, there's a lot of crappy low-end wine that comes over at a euro a bottle. we cannot have that. It's going to be so difficult for our industry to get up, thrive, more farmers to come into it, and us to have a broad-based industry. However, at the higher end, you want to bring down the duties, please go ahead and bring down the duties. That's our take on it. I think that that's a stand that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you think about
that? I mean, that's the first time I'm actually hearing this. And I think that makes complete sense, because I feel that, the entry barriers should be sort of made more equitable. And then it's a matter of, allowing because it's really, it's a bit more of a long-term growth, right? You're trying to encourage the wine drinking culture to start with. So if you don't even make the product accessible, you're not going to, you're not helping that. And I think that, I've always believed that the competition only sort of helps in the homegrown brands. So I really hope at some point we can move towards that, shift towards that system of supporting at the production level rather than at the sales point.
Yeah. Today you have so many food entrepreneurs, right? But you have hardly any entrepreneurs trying to make wine. And, I just wonder what that is. Maybe, I guess it's a little bit more daunting than just finding a space and making food. But as you very well know, that it's pretty daunting once you start having a food business as well. So, the government is giving so many benefits to those putting up wineries. You don't even have to put up your own winery. You can have a vision. You can buy the grapes from a grower on contract. You can decide which kind of variety you want. And you can actually custom make your own wine at somebody else's winery. And then the government has allowed 100% FDI in wine through the automatic route. So, you can even have foreign investors. So, I think the government has done a lot of good things also on the side of trying to promote production. You just don't have enough entrepreneurs, unfortunately, coming into it. Though we do hear stories now, even right now, there's 1 or 2 new wineries that are starting up this year in Nashik. So, I would love to see, 8, 10 good, strong producers making good, solid wine here. That's the other thing that we need, apart from having more imports, is to have more good, solid local wine brands. And I just wish that had happened more until now.
Yeah, well, you never know. And I agree that, there's nothing like boosting the domestic market. Let's talk a little bit about global trends now, entry-level wines. Are we going to see a shift towards this given a reduction in disposable income, or do you think this is kind of just a temporary situation, if at all?
So you're talking about India, right? You're not talking about the globe.
Yeah, I'm talking about India consumption patterns, but vis-a-vis...
So we are not really seeing that.
Okay.
We're not really seeing that. No. I mean, we might see, look, when our highest costing wine is 1,900 rupees in the Indian wine segment. Now, if you're talking about imports, people trading down from something that's 10,000 on your list to 7,000 on your list, yeah, you might see that. I mean, those are pretty hefty price tags. But if you're talking about people moving from 1,200, 1,300 rupee wines to 500, 600 rupee wines, we're not seeing that. In fact, if you look at our business, the business that's hurting the most is the cheapest segment. And I think that this whole lockdown, et cetera, has hurt in terms of income, those probably on the bottom of the income ladder, more than those at the top. Those at the top don't need to spend 200 rupees less on a bottle of wine. So what we call our elite wine business, which is our Rasa, our Dindori, our Source, that business is booming. Well, I won't say booming, but it's thriving in comparison to, some of the port wines and all of that stuff.
So it's very interesting, because I actually more and more am now, when people ask me for recommendations, I would recommend your premium wines over the entry-level imported wines, because at a price, there's price parity there, but the quality is far superior. And the thing that I actually often struggle with is convincing people to, including my own family, who's constantly saying like, hey, I need some wine, like, help me out. With this notion of not wanting to serve Indian wine, it's just crazy.
Which is something we need to...
Yeah, and I'm gonna sort of talk about that, because I really, I keep wondering what restaurants can do to help the Indian wine industry more. I mean, it's not even just about the, trying to no, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I think we hit on a great success with the launch of the Source.
Yeah, absolutely. Winery. I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Yeah. So that's been a big hit. Our Source it's at your table, it's at Soho House, it's at the Taj, discerning buyers are saying, wow, we really like this wine. And then it's a fresh label. It's something new. That's what, wine drinkers are looking for. The other thing, we come back to the thing where there are not enough Indian wine brands of quality. And so when you have wine drinkers like variety, and that's a challenge, right? So, and we can't just keep pumping out more wines with, say, Sula on them. There's that market, but it's not anymore in South Bombay, for example. South Bombay has moved on. I think South Bombay is ready for Indian wines of quality, but they're looking for new labels. They're looking for something fresh and exciting. And I think that that's the way. So I'm sure that when you're offering people the source, they're probably more happy to have it. I think that's the way ahead. We all also, those of us who are here, need to be more innovative, have a unique offering, different labels that tell a different story, and they are made with a different winemaking viewpoint. That's part of the thing. But, one of the things you said, I really like. So there are two things you said. One, you said your family, sometimes you have a problem convincing them. But at the beginning, you said that clearly Indian wines are getting better and better. Now, what we can do is make our wines better and better and not increase prices too much. And you'll see that we've pretty much held prices constant for 2 years. You might have noticed that. And so, and then hopefully people will say, hey, wow, at this price point, this wine just keeps getting better and better. It's just, it makes total sense to choose this wine now. And yeah. I hope we reach that point.
Yeah, well, I hope so too. Online buying of wines, the government finally, a bit late to the party, but finally allowed the online retail of wines out of necessity, for social distancing reasons. But as far as I heard, it reeled in customers like never before. Is this here to stay?
So I would like to distinguish between online buying and home delivery, right? So These are two distinct things. Online buying means you can click, on a website, this boom, pay online, and the wine gets delivered. Home delivery is good old fashioned. Call Warden Wines or call Shah and say, hey, send me this petty and that petty, and the delivery boy comes with the wines to your doorstep. Now, the government's view, and we are okay with this, is that home delivery is something that we should now allow again. Remember that it used to happen very much in Mumbai up to 4 years ago, and then suddenly in the middle, there was, it got stopped. Now it's got restarted. Everybody sees that this makes a lot of sense. We have highlighted to the government the fact that for women in particular, buying alcohol is almost an unsafe, it's an unsafe environment. You just look at the way our alcohol stores are, and you drive by and you'll see a counter with 10 guys throwing their hands out, trying to grab something. Which woman is going to feel comfortable about going there and buying a bottle of anything? So we have highlighted to the government that leave aside your thing about ID check and this and that. You are creating an unsafe buying environment for women by insisting that they have to go to the shop. And the government really sat up and took notice when we said that. I think that was a good angle. And they said, yes, you're absolutely right. No women in our households ever go to buy booze because it's so. Yes, home delivery is something that should happen. Online, they have serious reservations. It goes against the whole Prohibition Act about the marketing in places that anyone can see, et cetera, et cetera. So there's hurdles to get over as far as online goes. But home delivery has been a total boon, has been a bonanza. And I think that that's here to stay. And that's really saved the wine industry.
Wow. The ready-to-drink segment. So firstly, congratulations on the recent launch of your wine Diya in a can. We're seeing more producers get into this segment, which addresses the consumer's need for convenience. Can you tell me a little bit more about the process to identify and produce this as a product line?
Yeah, so, once again, Sula was the pioneer in bringing out India's first wine in a can, and that's Diya. And we started thinking about this maybe 3 years ago. And then, it took us some time to narrow down on which was the wine, and we decided that let's start out with a nice low alcohol, slightly sweet, slightly sparkling, fun wine, because the packaging is fun. And, so you want something, we don't want to start with a very serious wine or a very low quality wine. And, we already had Diya in our portfolio. We're already producing it in bottles, but it was unwieldy. These bottles were tall and, they break easily. And we said, this is the best wine to do in a can. So finally, we launched, I guess, about just before the pandemic started. So that's been a little bit slow on that front. But consumers are loving it. So I see a lot of potential in this segment. And it's the kind of thing that all of us have to continue doing. So after we came out with Dia, then Fratelli came out with Tilt. So there's already 2 wines now available in the market in cans. And I think that the dam's about to burst. I just think that you're going to see within 1 year, you're going to have at least 4 or 5 more brands in a can. It's inevitable. It's also from a sustainability point of view, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. Why do you want to be shipping heavy glass bottles around the country when you can be shipping lighter cans, fully recyclable? So there's all of that stuff going on. And to me, it makes a lot of sense. You're sitting on your couch watching IPL. You don't want to go through that whole thing necessarily of opening a bottle and having wine glasses, but a can of chilled wine, which you like, sip it just like somebody's drinking a beer, somebody's drinking a Pepsi, somebody's drinking a wine.
Yeah. No, I think it's about that making it a little more accessible and, less elitist, sort of trying to shed that approachability or rather have that approachability for wine. But it's really interesting that you said that this process actually started 3 years ago, because for me, that's, in any industry, when you're kind of looking at trends and you're trying to predict, you sort of have to be really ahead of the game in terms of thinking 3 years ahead.
Now it will be much easier.
Yeah.
Now it will be much easier for everyone following, because, we've done all the hard work about getting the standards approval. We had to get Institute that gives you the BIS standard and who would certify that, yes, this is fit for human consumption because it's the first time wine is in a can, and then get excise permission. Yeah. So until that, excise was not allowing wine in a can. Now, once they've allowed one, it becomes much easier for everyone else to come through.
Yeah. Sustainability, obviously protecting our planet has been one of the top priorities, especially for the younger generation who are also prime wine drinkers as of now. Is this a realistic goal for the domestic wine industry?
Very realistic, and not just realistic, very much happening. So, as far as Sula is concerned, sustainability is one of our pillars and always has been. So, I'm waiting for you to come out to Nasik. I really hope that I'm going to see you there one of these days so you can see for yourself. As our honored guest, as a great pioneer, is Gauri Devi Dayal with the table. So we would like to see you, to see for yourself the amazing stuff we're doing with solar energy. Oh, did I lose you all again? No, there you are. With solar energy, with rainwater harvesting, with drip irrigation, with packaging, with vermicompost, with reduction of chemicals in the vineyards. All of that good stuff is going on as we speak, and it really imbues everything we do.
Amazing.
So just to put it in perspective, I don't know if you know that we, Sula, generate close to 2 megawatts of solar power ourselves, which is massive. Wow. Yeah, which is enough to power, 1,000 homes or something. So we have our rooftop solar. It's absolutely massive. We do close to 2 megawatts ourselves. So during the daytime, all our energy needs are met by solar. And we take advantage of net metering and all of that. Then we do fantastic rainwater harvesting. So again, our roofs collect a lot of water. All of that water is collected. And we've done a lot of stuff in the vineyards to reduce our use of water. We've done a lot in the winery to reduce, because a fair amount of water gets used in winery.
Sure, I'm sure.
You got to focus on reducing your water use and then on reusing whatever the water is coming out, putting it into.
Absolutely.
So we're doing a lot of stuff that, in fact, we won Drinks Business Sustainability Award, a green award, about 3 years ago. I went to London I was in London. I won't say I flew all the way to London to pick it up, but, I picked up an award for that. Sula is a real pioneer across the world in terms of sustainable viticulture and winemaking.
Amazing. And you mentioned about coming to Nasik. So wine tourism, what can we look forward to? Of course, you're again ahead of the curve in that front, but what more can we look forward to?
It's a really exciting time. Again, it was really tough for 6 months. So I just want to tell you what I've been doing during COVID. I've been in Nasik. I've been on the vineyard. I was there for 8 months without leaving the property pretty much. Blending the 2020 harvest, which is the first time I was really close to that process in 5 years. So I feel really happy about it. And if you see a bottle of 2020, remember Rajeev Samant was very much a part of making this. And I hope you're going to say, wow, this is a great wine and a great vintage. So our hotels were shut 4 months, 6 months maybe. Tasting room was shut, but now that they've reopened, everything is really bounced back. I'm really happy to say that in October and November, our hospitality revenues are the same as last year, October and November. So people are flocking back. Yes, we are sticking to all the standards. But we found there's such a thirst for going to the vineyard and drinking the wine where it's made and seeing for yourself. People love it. And, we've barely scratched the surface. If you just think about how many people have visited us, okay, we are the most visited vineyard in the world. I don't know if you know that.
Wow.
So last year we crossed 4 lakh visitors. Nobody else comes close. I mean, that's 1,000 visitors a day. So, there's people coming from all corners of India and the world. A lot of people, you can see it's their first time drinking wine. So we also say that we are the place where more people taste their first glass of wine than anywhere else on earth.
Lovely.
So than anywhere else in the universe. And we think, so, that's that. I think Indian wine tourism has a long way to go. We're a lot of people are doing some cool stuff. It's still quite small. Obviously, it's nothing compared to a Napa or a Cape wine country or anything like that. But it's growing, every week, every month, some new facility coming up, a new this thing. And, it's very exciting.
It's headed in the right direction. That's great.
We're going to need food to match and cheese and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think all of that is happening. We all want to upgrade our food there because people who come there, mostly if you're coming to drink wine, you're a foodie.
Of course. Yeah.
So that kind of stuff is stuff also that we're looking forward to, that, restaurateurs like yourselves say that, hey, let's look at opening something in wine country.
Yeah.
That's going to be the next step.
Yeah. So, Rajeev, every crisis poses an opportunity to learn, improve, and innovate. And everyone is going to come out of the crisis changed in some way for the better, I hope. What have been some of your learnings?
So we have done a lot during this crisis. We made our whole production and manufacturing operation so much more streamlined and efficient that today we're making the same wine with, a third less man hours, for example. I mean, that's just something amazing. We also have at our head office, which has nothing to do with the winery, we have decided to go forever on a just 2 days in the office every week routine, 3 days work from home, and that's forever. We don't want to go back. So we gave out a third of our office. We had 2 wings. We gave out a third to Epigamia Yogurt. They are our neighbors now, another great company. And in fact, in the future, we're thinking that once Epigamia moves out, we'll probably just occupy that smaller wing, the 1/3, and give out the 2/3. So we just realized that, why did people need to cram into these horrendous local trains every day to get to work? I mean, what does it do to you as a human being to take that train back and forth every day? It's really an assault on your humanity. So we're not going to ask our people to do that anymore. They can sit, we give them good internet connections at home, and they do their work from home. And at the winery, just things, with the wine, with me being there, we've learned a lot about how we can make the wine even better. So I'm really looking forward to this year's Reserve Reds. I think we've really upped our barrel hygiene procedures, barreling procedures to give you an even better rasa, dindori experience. I don't know, we've learned a lot.
Nice.
We've learned about ourselves. I've learned about myself that I've really enjoyed my time with my family and my little 2-year-old. Yeah. I would never have been able to spend this much time with her. So that's something great as well.
Absolutely.
One more thing is that our people don't need to fly around the country and around the globe all the time. So we are cutting back massively on our flights, not just during COVID, obviously, but even post-COVID. We just decided, we used to love going to our trade shows and drink lots of wine and eat foie gras or whatever. I don't think we're going to be doing that much anymore. So pro wine, etc., and even going around the country to meet clients, etc., there's going to be a little less of that. It's going to be much more, our business is going to be much more localized.
Yeah. No, I think there's always been the possibilities of these efficiencies. It's just thrown us into that sort of frame of mind now. And, we see that things can work. And
listen, we've had fun, right? There's a lot of us who've enjoyed being sort of globetrotting, jet set. Oh, wow, I'm getting on this flight there, I'm getting on that flight and this and that, and drinking this good wine on this flight. But, hey, it's so unnecessary. It's so unnecessary. Yeah. We have a big problem, a much bigger problem than COVID facing us right now. which is climate change. We didn't talk about that, but let me tell you that Nasik is facing it as bad as vineyards all over the world. Vineyards all over the world. You've had fires,
frost.
You've had early frost. You have you don't have the cool weather that you had before. You have drought, and Nasik also faces it. And that today, I would say, if you ask me what's our number one challenge, it's climate change. COVID is hopefully, touch wood, going to be behind us pretty soon. We will all have to. Our lives will be a little bit different. But climate change, our lives are already changing in a big way, and they get ready for some much bigger, not so nice changes ahead. And we have to start adjusting for them right now in terms of the varietals we grow, in terms of how we decide to farm them, how we decide to make the wine. That's a whole totally different ballgame.
Wow. No, so lots of sort of challenges as well as, interesting things ahead for the wine industry. Rajeev, I'm going to grab you for the last 2 minutes for the sort of more fun segment of the show. What's your go-to comfort food?
So breakfast, it's poha.
Proper Maharashtrian you are.
Yeah. Proper. Otherwise, I got to say it's my mom's Safed Kolmichi Amti. So, which is sort of a cross between a Maharashtrian coastal and Parsi, actually with the white sauce. So that with some good varan bhat and matki, and you got me. I don't need anything else.
What's the best investment you've made in your journey so far?
Yeah, it's got to be Sula. I mean, what else? I threw up everything, tossed out my life in Silicon Valley, came back. I had started online trading. I was one of the first guys who had a day trader sort of account. I had my Schwab account back in, 1988 or 89, whenever Schwab came. I made money on Apple, Amazon, etc. 20 years ago, and took that money and invested it in this vineyard that has been a glorious part of my life. I would have to say, I love my work. I love everything we do, and that's. I haven't invested in too much outside Sula actually. So yeah. And
finally, what's your message to the young leaders of today? Not to mention anything about your age, but what's your message to the young leaders? Yeah, my message is that hey, we all have a lot of work to do.
My message would focus on climate change. That whatever you do, don't forget about the fact that the climate is in crisis. If you're a young leader, you're the one who's really going to have to deal with it. You might as well start dealing with it today. Be a climate warrior. Whatever you do, whatever else you do, be a climate warrior. Be, aware of, what we need to do, what we all need to do to stop this planet from going into the fires of hell, basically. The way it's looking right now, look at what happened in Australia. 1 billion animals burned to death in those fires. How can you not think about it and cry? And it's up to all of us to push our leaders and to push ourselves to change our lives, start using less fossil fuel, and start pushing all of us to think about how we can conserve our environment and our planet.
Rajeev, this has been incredibly inspirational, and I'm so excited for what lies ahead for the wine industry, for Sula, for our industry overall. And thank you so much for being here and making the time. I really appreciate it.
Gauri, always welcome, and I wish you all the best as you start bouncing back from COVID. Cross fingers that everything goes well and you're back to full power very soon.
All fingers and toes crossed. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. See you.
See ya.
Sometimes the world needs to fall apart to truly appreciate the little things in one's life that bring joy. Those things often keep the fabric of connection and community alive that have been missed during the times of COVID-19. Meeting with friends for drinks is one such thing, which is always cherished, and there's no other beverage that brings people together like wine. I hope you enjoyed tuning in today and took away something useful in my conversation with Rajeev.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's been an absolutely incredible week on the network. We had so many great guests, so many great episodes. Advertising is dead. We had Faye D'Souza on. Varun took a break for 4 weeks, but what a bang he's back with. Siddharth Deshmukh celebrates the 100th episode of The Traveling Professor. It is an amazing show which I cannot say enough good things about. Please do listen to it. And a different Siddharth on the network, Siddharth Bhatia. He's just been like absolutely guest after guest, right? This week, Zoya Akhtar talking about Gully Boy. I couldn't imagine a more interesting conversation. Ragini Kumar is on 2 different episodes this week. She is on Cyrus Says and she is on Edges and Sledges, both in anticipation of her new show, Zindagi Diaries. Do check out her appearance on both of those shows and her new show as well. Tanvi and Shloko, the Millennial Athlete, had a phenomenal episode with Dinesh Karthik and Abhishek Nair. Absolutely riveting stuff, talking about mentorship in many different ways. Definitely do give that a listen. And finally, I have a request to all of you. We have our listener survey going out this week. Every year we send out a listener survey at the end of the year. We're doing it again this year. And we would really appreciate your help in letting us know a little bit more about yourself. Our advertisers are really keen to find out who is listening to us and more about them. Anything that you could do is kept anonymously, and we would really appreciate your help in this. And to sweeten the pot just a little bit, we'll be giving a randomly selected group of participants in the survey some IVM swag. Last year we gave out coffee mugs. What we're going to give out this year is still a surprise. So please do help us out. Would really appreciate that. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
How many times have you motivated yourself to improve your sleep or lose weight or be more productive? How many times have you failed? Hi, my name is Ashton Doctor. Tune into my show, The Habit Coach Podcast, where we focus on creating small, tiny habits to improve your life instead of those big, impossible tasks. So make listening to me a habit every Monday, Wednesday and Friday on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com or on your favorite podcasting app.